Hey, this is Mad Movie Mark of the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1959 courtroom drama, Anatomy of a Murder.
You know, Major Darrell, I might manage it. For a little while, anyway.
Hey, well, that's fantastic. I hope you stay for the entire review. I'm reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch them and score them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm at 1959 with Anatomy of a Murder. This movie has 100% fresh rating from the critics and a 90% fresh rating from the audience. It stars my personal favorite actor of all time, James Stewart as Paul Biegler, Lee Remick as Laura Manion, Ben Garzzara as Lieutenant Frederick Manion, and George C. Scott as Claude Dancer, also Arthur O'Connell as Parnell Emmet McCarthy. Now, this movie was nominated for a plethora of Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Leading Actor for James Stewart, Best Supporting Actor for Arthur O'Connell and George C. Scott, Best Writing, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing. This was the last Oscar acting award that James Stewart would be nominated for in his career, and the first Oscar acting award that George C. Scott would be nominated for in his career. Unfortunately, they did not win any awards. This movie was up against a very heavy hitter named Ben-Hur, the movie which, of course, answers the question, where have you been? I've been right her. Okay, sorry. I know that was a terrible joke. So in this movie, Paul Biegler and his on-again, off-again drunkard partner, Parnell Emmet McCarthy, are tasked with defending Lieutenant Frederick Manion, who has killed his wife's attacker. So his wife was raped by this gentleman, and after hearing about this news, he went over to his place of business and he killed him. Now, throughout the beginning of the movie and the middle of the movie, there's no question as to whether or not Lieutenant Frederick Manion killed this gentleman. He did kill him. The argument that is trying to be made by the defense, by James Stewart, by Paul Biegler, is that he killed this man in a moment of insanity. So they're trying to use the insanity defense, that he didn't know what was going on at the time. He doesn't remember any of it.
I took some notes on my own. Doctor's name is Smith.
Smith? Anatole Ludwig Smith or Ludwig von Smith, I hope. A name like that would impress the jury.
No, just plain Matthew Smith. He said that when I shot Quill, I was suffering from dissociative reaction.
Dissociative reaction. Well, sounds pretty good, doesn't it, Parn?
Yeah, what does it mean in plain English?
Well, it means I had an irresistible impulse to shoot Quill.
It doesn't matter in this case if he knew right from wrong. They established that kind of in the middle of the movie. There's a precedence of a case from the 1800s, which it doesn't matter if he knew right from wrong. What matters is that he was insane at the time. He had this temporary lapse where he doesn't remember what he did. And that's basically the argument that they're trying to argue. There are a lot of hurdles in the way here for Paul Biegler and for Lieutenant Frederick Manion. First of all, Lieutenant Frederick Manion is definitely shown as a jealous individual.
Could also be that you might guide him a little, show him the way, and let him decide if he wants to take it. Want some salt?
No, I'm not ready. Anyway, I'm not the right lawyer for this fella. He's insolent, hostile.
You don't have to love him, just offend him.
He is jealous when other men talk to his wife. He's jealous even at points when Paul Biegler is talking to his wife. He seems like he's jealous. He has a bit of a short fuse. His wife also at one point says that she's scared of him.
Like your husband watching us from his cell window? All right. All right, let's have it.
Did he say something to you?
Just enough. Are you afraid of him?
Yes.
Because of this jealousy, she also is a bit flirtatious with almost everyone she meets, including Paul Biegler. And you can tell there's a lot of there's a lot of tension here between husband and wife. Paul Biegler is trying to paint this rosy picture of a great relationship, but that's not exactly what's existing in front of us. There isn't this passionate loving relationship as he is pointing out. On the other side of the aisle, Claude Dancer, he is trying to show that this actually wasn't a moment of insanity, that because Lieutenant Frank Manion has this side of him, this jealous side, that he knew exactly what he was doing, that he's beat up on other people before because of his jealousy, that he's beat up on his wife before, and this is just, normally what he does. He's a hot-headed individual who just goes off at times, and he just, killed a guy. That's the defense. Throughout the movie, they also try to paint Laura Manion as a woman who dresses sexually suggestively.
How were you dressed that night?
Oh, in a sweater like this and a skirt.
And the rest, what about that?
Underneath, I had on a slip and panties and a bra.
No girdle?
I don't need a girdle. Do you think I need a girdle?
I don't know.
I think that they're trying to argue at some points, and maybe it's just because it's the 1950s and it's like a different era. It almost seems like they're trying to argue that she's asking for it with what she's wearing. There's a particular individual who they question on the stand where they specifically ask what she's wearing and, like, is it suggestive? And they're trying to paint the picture that she dresses kind of slutty because she's asking for guys to hit on her. She's asking for men to take her home. She's like asking for guys to make a move on her because of how she dresses. Now, in today's day, that is a terrible defense. That defense would never happen. But they spent a lot of time in this movie kind of building her up as this like sex object that likes to go out at night when her husband's not home and really likes to like look for a good time when he doesn't know what's going on.
Well, we'd be very happy to show the court Miss Manion's hair. Miss Manion, would you take off your hat, please?
Considering the tight skirt and the tight sweater and the bare legs, what was the result in her appearance?
Well,
Would you say that Mrs. Manion's appearance was deliberately voluptuous and enticing?
You could pretty much see everything she had.
So that's basically their defense. Kind of in the middle of the movie, there's a woman who pops up named Mary Pallant. Now, she's a very important figure in this movie, especially at the end of the movie. I don't want to go into too much detail about who she is or who people suspect her to be, because I think that'll give away some of the ending. Now, I will say the ending is not a surprise ending, and the ending is really the weakest point of this movie, to be perfectly honest, especially after watching Witness to the Prosecution, which just had curveball after curveball after curveball. That's the kind of ending that I want in a courtroom drama. I mean, Witness to the Prosecution was so much above and beyond any real courtroom drama that I've ever seen before, as far as story and as far as, weaving different things intricately. This movie doesn't have that. This movie doesn't have an ending that's a surprise. It doesn't have an ending that's really going to make you think for a while and make you like question things and make you ponder things. Now, it does have an open-ended ending, which you have to kind of figure out for yourself, like, is this guy innocent or is this guy guilty? And was the case actually successfully argued in the way that it was won? You have to kind of make that up yourself. There is a definite answer at the end where the jury does give an answer as to whether they think he was insane when he committed this crime. But it's still not as concrete as you would like it to be. It's not like as tightly, wound up and packaged at the end. So you're going to have to decide that for yourself. So the ending to this movie is definitely a huge disappointment. But I will say, if you're looking for a movie where you just want really fantastic acting from everyone involved, you can't find a much better movie than this. I mean, Witness to the Prosecution is also up there, but James Stewart, I mean, I'm somewhat biased on James Stewart. He's my favorite actor of all time, and he does a phenomenal job. He does a James Stewart job in this movie. This is the kind of movie that he's built for, where he can like give speeches and he can really grandstand, and he can you can put the camera on him and just kind of let him go to work. And normally in a James Stewart movie, he kind of does his own thing. He definitely outshines everyone. He is the focal point of the movie. He is the acting focal point. He is the person that really brings the movie to life, at least in my opinion. He's what makes the movie usually. But in this movie, he has a fantastic counter with George C. Scott. I mean, George C. Scott, phenomenal actor. Whenever I see him, I still think that you guys are fighting here. This is the war room, type of thing. But he is just a phenomenal actor, and he goes toe-to-toe with James Stewart in this movie, back and forth. The scenes in the courtroom where they're both trying to one-up each other, they're both... at some point, they both win arguments. They both struggle in arguments. They lose arguments. There's never... This isn't a one-sided court case where someone is definitely winning throughout the whole thing. It's definitely a pull and tug, push and pull, where one side is winning and one side is losing, back and forth. And they do a fantastic job feeding off each other. And the acting is amazing. Lee Remick as Laura Manion is also... very good in this movie. Benjamin Garza is fantastic. Arthur O'Connell, who was also nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Now, Arthur O'Connell is good in this movie. He doesn't have a huge role. He doesn't play a huge part. But this goes back to, I think, in the 1930s or 40s, where a lot of these type of dramas, not recently, I will say that this not happen anymore, but back then a lot of these dramas would have like your resident drunk in the movie, your resident alcoholic, and then like out of nowhere they would just be nominated for an Academy Award because they were an alcoholic. I don't know necessarily if he did enough in this movie for him to be nominated for an Academy Award, or if it's just like hearkening back to the 1930s. Let's give the alcoholic an Academy Award nomination. I don't know. But the cast as a whole was extremely fantastic. You really believe who these people are. You really believe their motives. You really believe that Frederick Manion and Laura Manion have a relationship that maybe isn't fantastic. Maybe it's not great. Do they love each other? I don't really know, to be honest. We're told that they do, but nothing in the movie that we see actually proves that they do love each other. I have no idea. Did he actually do this? I don't know either. After watching the movie, I can't tell you. There's at the end of the movie where they have the big reveal and they have like, here's how we're going to prove whether or not he did it or not. To me, it's not incredibly conclusive. It's a shock enough to the jury. It's a shock to the people who are watching the trial on screen, but to the audience, it's not a shock at all, because you were told earlier in the movie who this person was. You were told earlier, you'd be able to kind of take a guess that this person's going to just come in at the very end and kind of, sway the jury one way or another. So it's not a surprise to the audience. Sure, a surprise to the jury. Definitely a surprise to the lawyers who were trying the case. But I don't know. It needs a little bit more at the end to really shock the audience. This type of movie, especially with the build-up, it really needs that. Now, this movie was controversial because it talked about things like panties and contraceptive, and that's just not something you talk about at the time. So for that reason, I believe that's one reason why it's historical and one reason why it's so famous, and also the acting. But to be honest, it falls a little flat for me. This isn't, especially after watching 12 Angry Men and Witness to the Prosecution. These three courtroom dramas are considered three of the greatest courtroom dramas of all time, and they're all from the 50s. But watching those two movies and then watching this one, I think I expected a little bit more than I should have. I expected that there was just going to be all these curveballs and twists and turns, and you just don't get that. So it's a nice movie. It's well acted. Script is great. Cinematography is really good, but not really enough for me to really boast about how fantastic it is. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.